Today in the gospel reading, we read what happened as Christ was having a conversation with his disciples before his crucifixion, and he was telling his disciples that he would have to go away and to leave them. And he tells them that they know the way that he is going. And then Thomas responded and said, "We don't know where you're going. How can we even know the way that you are going, or how is it that we can follow along in this way?" And Christ responded and said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Actually, what Christ reveals is that not only is he the truth, not only is he the life, not only is he the goal that we are trying to reach, that we are trying to reach heaven, that we're trying to reach a spiritual understanding, but that he himself is the way that we reach this understanding. He is the way that we walk the life that he asks us to walk in order to reach him. So he doesn't just set for us a goal that's very high, that's very far away, that's very difficult for us to reach, and say, go try your best. But he says, I will walk with you, that even though I am the destination, that I am also walking with you, and I am the way in which you were to walk. So we have to ask ourselves, are we walking along this way? What is the way that he asked us to walk, and are we walking by it? What are the characteristics of those who are walking on the way? The first is they accept to die with him. Anyone who wants to walk this way accepts to die with Christ. This starts actually on the day of our baptism, because on our baptism, we are buried in the waters of baptism with Christ, and we are resurrected again with him. This is the first step toward walking in the way with him, walking in the way, which is a way that is often painful and difficult, but it leads us to the joy of being with him. In Luke 13:24, it says, "Strive to enter through the narrow gate. For many, I say to you, will seek to enter and will not be able." This is why the narrow gate is a difficult gate. It's a gate that not everyone can accept. What is it that is required of me for me to walk this gate? Actually, in John 12:26, it says, "If anyone serves me, let him follow me, and where I am, there my servant will be also." Christ himself showed us and demonstrated what it meant to walk the narrow gate by living a life of self-sacrifice. That when from the moment he was born to the minute that he died, he gave of himself to others, and he sacrificed everything he had for others, and there was nothing that he did for any selfish purpose or reason. And even though he, being God, could have enjoyed every luxury, and could have enjoyed every peace, enjoyed everything that was good, and yet he allowed himself to suffer for our sake. And we see that in his life, he had very little things that we would look at and say, I wish I had this life. He was constantly traveling from place to place. He suffered many, many things, and he was rejected many times by many people. And yet this was the narrow gate. So when he tells us this is the way of salvation, he says, do what I do. Follow what I do. And he shows us a life that he wants us to live. Not exactly in exactly the same things that he did, but God provides each of us a gate. He provides each of us this narrow path, the struggle, the things that we struggle with in our life to attain him, to reach him. This is what we struggle with in our life. This is part of the way, of being on the way, that I'm walking in a way that is pleasing to God, that I'm struggling and going through the narrow gate. Sometimes people believe that the favor of God is shined upon us when we have no problems, we have no trials, everything is going our way, and this is a reflection of the favor or the goodness of God. And that sometimes we feel when God allows catastrophic things and difficult things to happen to us, then this is actually a sign of some sin maybe that I committed or something that I've done wrong, and that God is not pleased with me. But actually, if you read the scripture very carefully, it's actually all over. It's not just hidden in one place or another. In the whole scripture, from beginning to end, you see examples of people that live difficult lives. Look even at the prophets. What type of life did they live in the Old Testament? Did they live a life of relaxing? Did they live a life of luxury because they were favored by God, that God would even speak to them the words that he would want them to tell to others? No, they actually lived a very austere life, a very difficult life. A life of martyrdom, a life of complete self-sacrifice. This is the kind of life, actually, of those who are favored by God. So if we want to say, actually, that we walk in the way of Christ, we walk in the way of God, we have to really understand what is it that I'm asking. When I ask God, I want to walk in your way, are we willing to accept this? Or are our eyes are only on the rewards? What are the rewards of those who walked in the way when they reach to the end? It's kind of like when you're exercising, and maybe you need to exercise for 1 hour, and you can't stand the exercising. It's horrible. It's a horrible experience. And yet you still look forward to the time at the end when you're going to be done, and you can say, yes, I did what I was supposed to do. And I exercised what I was supposed to exercise. In our life, maybe we will not find as many things that are comfortable and relaxing as we would like. But we aim our focus toward what comes later on. the ease and the comfort. And this type of joy is what comes later, not necessarily now. Also, this is not a one-time death. When we speak about baptism, when we say we are buried with Christ and we rise with him in the waters of baptism, this is not a one-time death. This type of death is the beginning of salvation, but salvation continues through the process of death. When St. Paul speaks about that we have to be dead to sin, that we have to, our flesh, we have to nail it on the cross, that we have to be dead to the pleasures and lusts of the world. What does this mean? Essentially, I keep killing my flesh, not in a physical way, but I keep denying my flesh what it desires so that I can be with God. Actually, if you think about what prevents our spirit from rising to God right now, what prevents my spirit from rising to God now is my body. Because the moment my body dies, what happens to my spirit? It rises. It goes to God. So what prevents me from reaching God is my body, my flesh, my corruption is what prevents me. This is why when we put to death the deeds of the body, essentially what we're doing is we're killing the body even while we are still alive. We are denying our body everything that it desires, everything that it wants, not because those things are necessarily evil or wrong, but we do not want to be distracted by anything. We want to be focused completely only on God. And that's how we grow spiritually. When we fast, for instance, we kill our bodies. We tell our bodies, I'm not going to give you the food you desire. I'm going to deny you what you want. And in those times of fasting, we might find ourselves closer to God and feeling his presence more. Again, remember, our flesh is what keeps us here. Our flesh is what keeps us here. And when the flesh dies, our spirit rises. The other characteristic of those people who follow in the way, the characteristics of those who walk on the way of Christ, is that they are sinners, but they are not wicked. Sometimes we waver between two extremes. Sometimes we think ourselves that we are the absolute worst sinners and that we are nothing and we are dust, and we hate ourselves and we feel like we are the worst people ever that God created, and that we can never ever overcome the sins that we are struggle with, and there is nothing that I can do that I should even have hope in my salvation. This is one extreme. The other extreme is I believe that I have no flaws and I am perfect and I'm happy so much with the way that I am, and I don't feel any desire to confess, and I don't feel like I do anything wrong, and I justify myself in everything. Both of these two extremes are wrong. Actually, the correct way of the balanced way to see myself is I am a sinner, but I am redeemed. God can forgive me. God saves me. God forgives my sins, but I am still a sinner. So whereas the wicked maybe are those people who do not even try, do not even struggle, and actually desire sin and are happy after they sin because they get the results of their sin. Whereas we who are sinners, we maybe fall into many of the same sins, but we do not desire to sin. We hate sin, and we want to overcome the sin, and we feel sorrow when we sin, and we turn to God and ask him to forgive us. Hebrews 10:26 says, "For if we sin willfully, after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins," which means that someone who has accepted Christ, someone who has been baptized, someone who is a believer, if they turn away and reject this completely to the last breath of their life, then there is no way for them. Those of us who would reject Christ and we would live the rest of our life in wickedness, not weakness, but wickedness. Wickedness meaning that I do not desire to return, and that I am completely deliberately falling into sin on my own. So those who are on the way are actually sinners. Sometimes people come into the church and are offended at the idea that the people in the church are sinful, or that someone in the church said something or did something that wasn't right. And we are surprised by this as though this is something abnormal. Actually, this is what we should expect when we deal with human beings, even those who are in the church, even with the priests and the bishops, everyone. We are all sinners and weak. So we're going to make mistakes and do things that we shouldn't do. But this is actually why we come. We come because we are in need of salvation. We come because we are in need of sanctification. We are in need of forgiveness of our sins here, as the church is a hospital to those who are sick that are coming. Not a place where healthy people come, but sick people. So the church is full of sinners. And this is why the church exists. The church exists is to heal those of us who sin. Also, sinners feel shame for the sin they commit, but the wicked people rejoice. We feel, as sinners, we feel shame when we commit sin. Whereas the wicked people, maybe they feel joyful that they got away with something that they wanted to do. They found a way out. They found a way to trick the system. They found something that they could do in hidden, that is secret, that nobody will see. And they don't care really what God sees about them. They care more about what man sees. Maybe we try to hide from other people what it is that we do. And as long as we hide from other people what we do, we feel satisfied and content. But if we don't realize that God is actually seeing us, He's seeing everything about us. He knows what it is that we're doing. Also, sinners may fall and rise again many times. We may fall and rise. We may commit the same sins over and over and over, and each time we repent sincerely and we wish to change and to overcome. This is normal in the spiritual life. We shouldn't fall into the extreme of falling into despair, believing that there is no hope for us. Actually, we all struggle with this. This is something that we can overcome through the grace of God over time. But the wicked are not like this. The wicked do not rise. The wicked remain in their sin and continue in sin because they have become so desensitized to what they're doing that either because of their gain or because of their insensitivity sin, they continue to sin. These people are not on the way. These are on the way to perdition, not the way of Christ. Psalm 25:8 says, "Good and upright is the Lord, therefore He teaches sinners in the way." Who is it that Christ teaches? It's sinners. Those of us who are sinful is the one whom Christ teaches. He hasn't given up on us. He continues to teach us. And as the Proverbs say, that the Son is chastised by the Father. The reason He chastises us, the reason He disciplines us is because He sees us as His children. He hasn't abandoned us, and He loves us, and He wants what's best for us. Also, the characteristics of those who walk in the way is they walk to the very end. They walk to the very end. Psalm 119:33, it says, "Teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes, and I shall keep it to the end." This is one of the most important things about the Christian life, is that we keep it to the end. For many of us have started a good fight. Many of us have started with zeal and energy and discipline, but how long were we able to maintain that zeal and that energy and that discipline? So there is some requirements that we need in order to persevere to the end of this race. The first one is trusting the leader. Trusting the leader. Who is the leader? The leader is God. Remember, He said that I am the way, meaning that He is the one leading us along the way to Himself. We have to trust in His ways. We have to trust in the way that He works. Do we believe the way that God works? Do we believe that the way He works tends not to be through miracles where He magically changes our nature in a moment, but that He changes us gradually over time through a sincere struggle and through the working of His Spirit in us over time? If we don't believe actually in the way that God works, we will give up, because we will not see the fruit in the way that we expect, or it might take longer than we think, and we will never persevere long enough to really see the changes happen in us. This lack of trust was actually the main reason why the Israelites did not enter the Promised Land. The Israelites, when they were standing at the border of the Promised Land, and they were told to go in and inherit the land, and yet they were afraid and did not enter the land because they did not trust. They looked at the enemies that was in the land, and they said they are giants and many, and even though the land was very good and they wanted the land, they felt they could not enter and go in because they were afraid. They did not trust that God, who brought them to that point, God who brought them out of Egypt, could then allow them to enter the Promised Land and have victory over their enemies. It's actually said about them in Hebrews 3, "So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief." They had no trust. They did not believe that they could enter. They calculated it according to their own way. They kept thinking, how could we go up against these people and fight against them and overcome them when we are weak compared to them, and we are just wanderers in the desert against these mighty armies? So they did not trust God. So we sometimes also do the same. We do not trust that His way is working, that His way, as He promised us, will lead us to Him. And we give up so soon, and we begin to feel like whatever is happening around me is out of control, and that God is not allowing it for a reason to allow us to draw closer to Him. When we trust in God, we actually receive comfort along the way. Maybe not all of our problems are solved, those things that He's put in our way to help us to grow, but we receive comfort from Him. John 14:1 says, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me." Our comfort should come from our faith in Him, that we are trusting in Him as the leader, as the one who is guiding us and protecting us. Also, my trust for Him causes me to seek His guidance. When I am troubled or when I don't know what to do and I'm confused, I turn to Him. Psalm 143 says, "Cause me to know the way in which I should walk, for I lifted up my soul to you." When I lift up my soul to God, I'm seeking from God something. It says, cause me to know. Help me to know the way that I should walk. Which way that I should walk. God, why are you doing this? What decisions should I make, and what direction should I go? This is all for God to reveal to us in His due time. But we receive comfort from Him when we know Him and we see Him and we find Him with us always. The next point of the characteristics of those who walk in the way is focus. Okay, we must remain focused on the path we are on and not lose focus or else go astray. If sometimes we begin on the right path, but we quickly become distracted by something. This happened actually to King Solomon. When he started his journey, when he became the king, he sought for the wisdom that only God can give, and God gave him such amazing wisdom that was beyond what any other human being had ever been given. And his kingdom was greater than any other kingdom of any king that has ever lived before or since. And God gave him the ability to make judgments on the people and to have wisdom to know how to discern what is right and what is wrong and how to govern them. And yet, King Solomon he became distracted. He became distracted with his success, with his pleasures. He became distracted with his money, with his wives, with so many things in the world that he lost the focus of this heavenly wisdom and became distracted. And in Ecclesiastes 2:1, it says, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. This same person who was so wise gave up his wisdom and instead tried to find joy and pleasure on the earth. It was this self-serving goal that led to emptiness. When he keeps using the word vanity, and the word vanity in Ecclesiastes is like the word that's the most common that we keep hearing is vanity of vanities, everything is vanity. That his conclusion at the end, after he had experimented with every pleasure and every joy that any human being can experience, in the end he comes back and says it's all worthless, it's all empty, there is nothing of anything of value under the sun, because in the end all of this will end. None of this will exist. All of this will go away. What really will matter is the things that last forever. And that's what God wants us to remember all in this way, is that we are not working for a heavenly or for an earthly reward. We're not working for something that will be given to us here. While, yes, God might give us comfort, and while God might solve some problems that we ask of him, even the solutions to those problems are not our end goal, because we will have more problems. We will have more pain. We will have more suffering. There will always be one form of suffering or another in our lives, whether one type or another, or to one person or from another. There will always be pain in this life. If we try to reach a point in our lives where we are completely free from suffering and pain, we will never find it. And sometimes we become disappointed with God because this moment never comes. Even if a specific trial that I have is solved, later on we will have another trial. And we don't know how long the trials will last, and we don't know what the solution will be, and we don't know maybe why God is allowing these trials. So going back to the first point of trust, we have to trust in him who's allowing this, and we have to remain focused. My mission is to complete my life in faithfulness. My mission is to persevere to the end in love for God, obeying his commandments, and God will grant me a heavenly reward that's far, far greater than any reward that I can receive in the world. The next characteristics of those who walk in the way is self-discipline. This is the last one we'll speak about. Somebody once said, a man without decision of character can never be said to belong to himself. He belongs to whatever can make a captive of him. Actually, when you look at the way that we use our time, this will determine who our master is. This is very simple. If we look at our time and how we use it, we will find out who we are a slave to. If we spend all of our time, for instance, watching TV, if we spend all our time on the internet, if we spend all our time gossiping, if we spend all our time doing whatever it is that we do, that is our master. A master determines how a slave uses his time. A master commands the slave, and the slave does according to what his master has said. The slave does not own his time, but the master owns it and tells him how he should spend it. So even though we believe ourselves to be free, and the world, in this country, we believe that we are free, and yet we'll find that maybe more people than not are actually slaves because they do not control their time. There is an urge inside of them that forces them to use their time in a certain way. The addictions that we face that force isn't the right word, but compel us and urge us to use our time in a certain way, and we feel that this usage of time somehow gives us some kind of momentary relaxation, something that it appeases or satisfies in us. And yet we find, like of any other addiction, once it's appeased, it doesn't stay appeased. It comes back again and again and again. And we find that we use our time oftentimes in a very destructive way, a very wasteful way, because we are not self-disciplined. The idea of self-discipline is that, as God has said, that we should redeem the time because the days are evil. Redeeming the time means that I use my time for good. I exchange my time for holiness and righteousness. 1 Peter 1 says, "Therefore gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, as obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts, as in your ignorance. But as he who calls you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct." Okay. So what is he saying? He's saying three main things. The first part, gird up the loins of your mind, meaning we have to gird our minds, our thoughts. What is the condition of our thoughts? Every action that we perform starts as a thought before it is an action. So if I improve my thoughts, if I don't allow evil thoughts to enter into my mind, then I will improve my actions indirectly. So first is gird up the loins of your mind. And the second, as obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts, as in your ignorance. So we have to guard our hearts, not being conformed. We have to guard our hearts, our emotions. So not only do we have to have our thoughts to be sanctified, but we also have our emotions to be sanctified. And then the last part, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. This is our outward actions, our lifestyle, the way that we act, the way that we behave. All these things work together in a form of self-discipline, that I am controlling my thoughts. I am guarding my heart so that I do not allow any emotion that I feel to be practiced. Some people believe that if I feel it, I must put it into action. I must practice it. If I feel something inside of myself, then I must somehow express it instead of suppressing it. Maybe an emotion I feel is a wicked one. Maybe it's going to lead me in the wrong direction. And maybe even though it might cause me some momentary joy, maybe it's wrong to do. I have to guard my heart not to allow it to experience and to act out everything that I feel. This is actually how Samson lost his leadership of Israel. Samson was one of the judges of Israel, and he had very little self-discipline. Essentially, whatever he wanted, he did. He broke the law of him being a Nazirite. He broke the law. He ate from the dead carcass of a lion. He ate honey. He had relationships with women that were not even Israelites. They were Gentiles. And all these things that he did as he was supposed to be the leader and the example of all of Israel to follow, and yet he lost it. And in the end, we find in his life that his eyes were gouged out, and he was standing in a temple of the Philistines, and he crushed the temple and killed himself and the Philistines together. This, even though in the end he killed the enemies of God, but he himself lost his own soul as a result. He himself died with them. This was not the kind of end that God would have wanted for such a man who was a judge of Israel, because he did not have any self-esteem. If I cannot lead myself, how can I lead others? When we think maybe those of us who are parents or those of us who are servants in some way, there are other people that rely on us. Sometimes we focus so much on the outward, the way that I'm going to act in front of people. But people can see through us and know whether we are living a disciplined life or not. And I cannot lead other people to God if I myself cannot lead myself, if I cannot control myself. So today we spoke about several points relating to the characteristics of those who walk in the way. And God himself, Jesus said, "I am the way and the truth and the life." If we follow in the way of Christ, according to these characteristics that we spoke about, then we will be led closer and closer and closer to him. But if we believe that the way he has offered us is any different than these things, we will find ourselves walking in a completely different direction that is far away from him. So may God grant us this sense of self-control and this sense of focus and discipline and trust and faith in him to allow us to walk and persevere to the end. And glory be to God forever. Amen.